I built my Fast Attack vehicle to look like a sand buggy, and I want to share 3 scale props which helped give it more realism. Number 1. Installing an aerial where the military gun would normally be. The easiest method I found was to take an 1150 bearing or one of the plastic bushings supplied in the kit and use it as a template by drawing around it onto some 2mm thick styrene. The bearing is perfect, as it's exactly the same size as the mounting point under the hood. I did this off camera, but I cut it out using these snips, making a rough hexagon shape before sanding down the edges. It won't be seen, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but I tried to keep it as regulated as I could so I could identify where the middle is before I drilled the hole. You're never going to cut out a perfectly shaped circle the size of a bearing by hand, so naturally you're going to be leaving it a little bit larger than your template. But that's a good thing, because if you don't drill the hole perfectly central, you're going to have a little bit of wiggle room to move it until it's lined up, because you want the aerial to be mounted as central as possible. The hole needs to be exactly the same size as the standard Tamiya aerial, so it will friction fit and stay tight, because you don't want it to move up or down or fall out when you're driving. I measured the aerial with my calipers, and then I found a drill bit that matched the size exactly. This small hand drill set is ideal for something like this. I got mine from AliExpress, but you can pick them up on eBay, Amazon, or even your local hobby shop. Once you're confident that you've drilled the hole as close as you can to the middle, you can attach it underneath the hood with some super glue. I like this one because you can squeeze the sides to release the glue, which works better than the traditional type bottles. When you're done with it, tap it on the table to move the glue down away from the nozzle before you put the lid on. This should stop any glue going off inside the nozzle. To add a bit more scale realism and fill out the hole in the top of the hood, I took these little rubber pieces supplied with my favourite servo and slid 2 of them onto the aerial. They're a perfect fit and they're snug, so they're going to stay in place. I have toyed with the idea of adding another one near the top to emulate a coiled aerial which you often see on CB radios. The beauty of this is you can easily remove the aerial as it's not permanently fixed, and you can make any changes that you want. You can buy metal aerials which would look more realistic, but I like the idea of something more flexible, and you can get these in a variety of colours depending on the scheme that you've created. Prop number 2. Window mesh gives the buggy a whole different look, and before I decided to buy this stuff I researched how big the mesh holes should be, and I think it looks spot on. It was cheap and I'll add a link in the description, but before you take a look, let me explain that this is much thicker and stiffer than the usual Tamiya mesh. You might find pros and cons to this, but I like that it will hold its shape when installed. If you look at this image of the Blockhead Wild one, the mesh looks alright, but it's a bit all over the place and flimsy to me, so I actually prefer the look of this stuff. It is intended for barbecues and it's fireproof, so if you need to trim it after cutting it with scissors, find yourself a sharp blade to tidy things up, because a flame won't do anything. Initially, I started by creating a template, and using a pencil I marked it out. Then I cut out a piece a little bit larger than I thought I'd need and worked backwards from there, trimming it until I was happy with the size. It took me a while to get the right amounts cut for the fit that I wanted, and I ended up removing more than I initially thought. Better that way than having too little and having to cut out a whole new piece. I attached it using zip ties, which were a bit fiddly in places without dismantling it, but it was doable. Let me know what you think of this stuff and if it's something you would use. Prop number 3. A number plate attached to the rear cage. This wasn't as easy as I thought it might be. Well, it wasn't too bad, but not as easy as the first time I made one, but that didn't last long after it snapped off in a rollover. It looked cool, but hanging out the top of the buggy, it just had no protection. I had to rethink it and decided to place it lower down so it was less exposed. I started by trying to get an idea of the shape that I wanted by using a piece of card and marking it out with a pencil. This gave me a rough cut, and when I felt more confident I was on the right track, I cut out some 1mm thick white styrene. I have to say that I didn't find it easy to shape it in the way that I wanted in this position, because I felt it needed to work with the angles of the frame rails, and I did continuously adjust it throughout the process. As a template, I used the mounting holes from my previous number plate to mark them on the new one. But if you're starting from scratch, put some blue tack on the number plate, push it into position, and the blue tack will show you where the holes need to be. I used a body reamer to mark the holes and then start them off. But then I finished it with my drill to make sure it was the right size hole. Sometimes I go too far with a body reamer, and making these small holes, I thought it would be best to play it safe. To make fine adjustments and get all of the edges lined up with the frame, I used a sanding block that I made by gluing a bit of sandpaper onto a piece of scrap MDF. It took several adjustments before I was happy with it, and I soon realised I needed to sit away from the frame a little bit because one part of the frame was twisting it slightly. So I added two 2mm spacers, and that was just enough for it to sit flat and allow me to finely tune it to match the shape of the frame rails. Again, I picked these spacers up from AliExpress when I was looking for the part number A15 to be in black rather than the stock tan colour. When you buy them, you get a bunch of them in a pack, so I had plenty of spares for little jobs like this. Shout out to Josh for hooking me up with an extra number decal to match the other 3 on the buggy. And I also added 2 small stickers which are usually overlooked on sticker sheets. And I think they filled out the space well, although I've got no idea what they mean. I think it looks better than it did before, and I'm looking forward to driving it again soon and getting some nice footage. I hope you found this useful, and if you want to make sure you don't lose one or both of the driver's arms because they are known to fall off, watch this video next.